Penny from The Big Bang Theory is a loser. Penny is awful. The show spends years trying to convince us that Penny is the normal one. She's the cool one, the hot girl next door, the socially adjusted outsider. But, Penny's just a loser with better social skills. And honestly, Sheldon is the one who saw it first. People act like Sheldon was being rude in the beginning when he basically wanted Leonard to leave Penny alone. And he was right. He looked across the hall, saw the disaster, and thought, no, do not bring this woman into our lives. And for once, Sheldon's complete lack of social warmth wasn't the problem. Sheldon wasn't being cruel, he was being accurate. Because let's be honest here, what does Penny actually bring? She's broke, she's irresponsible, she needs help constantly, she borrows things, never returns them, she eats their food, she leans on them for favors, she drifts through life while still somehow acting like she's above the people helping her. And the show treats that as adorable because she is attractive. But it's a scam. If Penny looked average, half of her quote unquote sass would just be called being rude. If she was not the hot girl next door, people would not romanticize her attitude. They would say, why is this woman always broke and always judging everyone, always taking help and still acting like the smartest person, in the building? That is what makes her so excruciating. She has very little reason to feel superior, but somehow superiority is her default setting. The guys are weird, sure, obviously. Sheldon's impossible, Howard's a creep, Raj is pathetic, and, Leonard is needy to a level that should legally require a warning label. He has the attitude of a wet napkin. But at least the show knows that these guys are ridiculous. Their flaws are the joke. But Penny's flaws are treated like charm. And that's where the writing protects her. When Sheldon is selfish, the show recognizes that. When Howard's being creepy, the show knows he's creepy. When Raj cannot talk to women, it's embarrassing. When Leonard sims so hard that his spine practically evaporates, he looks pathetic. But when Penny mocks people, acts entitled, drinks through her problems, looks down on everyone's hobbies and treats Leonard like a backup plan, the show frames it like she's just being honest, like she's being the grounded one. Absolutely freaking no way. No, 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 no. She's being horrible. There's a difference between, not being into the nerd culture and constantly mocking it, acting like it's beneath you. Penny doesn't have to love comic books. She doesn't have to care about Star Trek. She doesn't need to spend, her weekends painting little fantasy figurines. That's all fine. But if these people are supposedly your friends, maybe stop acting like their interests are a disease that you are bravely surviving. That is one of the most annoying things about her. The nerds are embarrassing. Sure, they are, of course. But at least they care about something. They have careers, skills, they have passions, friendships. They build identities around things that they actually love. Penny just spends a huge chunk of the show failing at acting, struggling with money, drinking, judging, borrowing, and still walking around like she's the shit. She isn't. And then there's Leonard, who somehow makes the whole thing even worse. Leonard is already one of the most unlikable characters on the show, I think. Not because he's the worst person, but because watching him around Penny is painful. It's cringy. He doesn't act like a man in love. He acts like a man begging the universe to validate him through this hot blonde woman. He sees Penny as proof that he can get the hot girl, proof that he is not just the awkward nerd, proof that every woman who ignored him was wrong. And because of that, he puts up with this absolute nonsense. Penny talks down to him, mocks his interests, makes him feel lucky to be tolerated, and Leonard just stands there. He just takes it like, thank you. It's embarrassing. And yes, Penny is bad, but Leonard's behavior makes her worse. He rewards the attitude, he puts her on a pedestal. And, then he acts surprised when she looks down on him. He treats her like she's out of his league, when the harsh truth is that she's only out of his league because he convinced himself that she is. If anything, he's out of her league. That relationship, it isn't romantic, not at all. And the show just wants you to see that as a win. The nerd gets the hot girl. Happy ending, roll credits. But why is that a happy ending? What did he actually win? What did Leonard really win? A woman who often seems embarrassed by his world? A woman who acts like basic respect is something he has to earn? In real life, 99% of the people would not deal with Penny for long. The looks would get attention, sure, and her quote unquote charm might buy her some time, maybe an extra day, but eventually the attitude would become exhausting. Because being attractive does not make constant disrespect cute forever. At some point, the hot girl next door just becomes the annoying woman across the hall. And out of everyone on the show, Penny might honestly, truthfully be the worst. Not in the strangest way, not in the most cartoonish way, but she's, the worst person in a very real, draining way. Sheldon's unbearable, I get that. Howard's terrible. Raj is a mess, and Leonard's pathetic. Bernadette, she's a close second for me because she becomes this mean, sharp, nasty, controlling person. While the show pretends it's adorable because she's tiny and she has a squeaky voice. But Penny has the most irritating combination out of all of them. Entitlement without achievement, judgment without curiosity, and confidence without much substance behind it. And that's why Amy, weirdly enough, starts to seem like the most normal person in the whole show. She begins as this socially awkward female version of Sheldon, but compared to everyone else, she actually develops something resembling emotional honesty. She wants connection. She tries. She gets a pass. But Penny, oh no, Penny does not get that same pass from me. Because Penny's problem is not that she fails. Failing at acting does not make you a loser. Struggling with money doesn't make you a loser. Not having a PhD, it doesn't make you a loser. Not liking the nerd culture, it does not make you a loser. Penny is a loser because she combines all of that with arrogance, entitlement. That is the part that makes her unbearable. If you're lost, be humble. If you need help, be grateful. If you are surrounded by people who support you, maybe, just maybe, do not spend half your time acting like their entire existence is embarrassing. You know, Penny acts like she's above the circus, but she's not. She is the circus. And that's why Sheldon was right at the start. Leave Penny alone. Not because women are trouble, not because nerds should stay with nerds, not because Sheldon is some emotional genius, he isn't, but because he looked at Leonard's desperation and Penny's chaos and understood in his weird robot way that this was going to be a disaster. And it absolutely was, wasn't it? Leonard did not see Penny, he saw a fantasy, the hot neighbor, the impossible girl, the prize, and that fantasy made him ignore what was right in front of him. Penny is not the prize, never was, never will be. Penny is what happens when a sitcom mistakes attractiveness for character development. Because her whole arc over all these seasons, it's very, very shallow. She's not better than the nerds. She's not more mature than them. She's not more interesting than them. Oh God, no, she isn't. She's absolutely not interesting. She's just a different kind of loser. A more socially acceptable loser, I get that. Maybe a prettier loser, but nonetheless, a loser. A loser who gets to roll her eyes at everyone else because her laugh track keeps pretending she has a point. That's what it is. But usually, she doesn't have a point. She's rude. She's shallow. She's exhausting. She is carried by people she looks down on. And somehow the show keeps asking us to see her as Leonard's reward. No. Penny from the Big Bang Theory is not out of Leonard's league. Leonard just hates himself enough to think that she is. Penny is absolutely the worst.